We're going to look at a story this morning that talks about rejection, talks about hurt, surprise, um, somebody who wished their father was dead, somebody who thought about themselves, somebody that was about the money. We're in a series. If you put it on my slides, that'd be great. We're in a series where we're looking at one chapter in the Bible called Luke 15, and the series we called it For the One. And so Luke chapter 15 is actually a trilogy of stories. Jesus is talking to some people, and he's actually reacting. And so we're going to look at the very beginning because the first kind of setting up these three stories is super important to understand why Jesus is telling these three stories. Because it wasn't like Jesus, at least how I interpret the text, it wasn't like Jesus was planning this out. He's reacting to a situation, and to react to the situation, and he decides to tell three stories. And so Luke chapter 15, verses 1 and 2 starts off like this. Tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. So Jesus was a teacher. A rabbi is what you'd call a teacher. And so teachers teach, right? That's what they do. So he's always teaching. And he had to attract, often would come listen to him, as this version calls it, notorious sinners. And this made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. And so you got to understand, the Pharisees and the teachers of religious law, these would be like the experts, the religious experts. These would be the ones that would, they would be, I was going to say they'd be the ones kind of running the services. They'd kind of like me right now, so if you want to call me a Pharisee, hopefully you won't. But, these are kind of the people that were up front leading things, leading these. And so how I like to think of this picture right now is there's Jesus up front, he's teaching, and he's got a crowd. And there's probably people all sitting, kind of on the ground and stuff like that, making themselves comfortable. And all these people sitting on the ground and making themselves comfortable, they would be notorious sinners. They would be the type of people that you'd be kind of questioning, seriously, you're listening to a religious talk? Seriously, you're here? And then standing in the back wasn't like the sound people, but it was these Pharisees and religious leaders, and they kind of got their arms crossed, and they're listening to what he's saying, and they're murmuring to each other of kind of seriously, who's this Jesus guy? Look at the crowd, look at the riffraff that he's attracting. And so then Jesus tells three stories. He tells a story of a lost sheep that Kelly talked about last Sunday. Then he tells a story of a lost coin that Kelly's going to talk about next Sunday. And then he tells a story about two lost sons. And he starts off telling that story. He says, to illustrate the point further, Jesus told him this story. A man had two sons. And I got to tell you, this story has shaped my life more than anything ever. My eyes were open to this story about 30 years ago. And for the last 30 years, it's just been something I've been chewing on, reading on, studying, pondering. In my house, if you asked my family, what's your dad's favorite Bible story or passage, they would all easily say, oh, the story of the prodigal son. So this morning, one of my kids was asking me, hey, what are you talking on? And I said, story of the prodigal son. And he just started laughing. This is just worked its way through me and in me, and it's something I'm still working with and thinking about and struggling. But like this for me is this spot. Luke 15 is for me just kind of like where I gravitate to. And so Jesus tells a story about two sons. And so you got to understand, like the world that Jesus is in 2,000 years ago is different than the world that we're living in right now. This was an agricultural culture, owning land, farming your land, working the land. This is how jobs were created. This is how income was made. This is how it was this agricultural community. You didn't travel far away. You traveled within your little town, your little area, and you worked the land. And so Jesus says in this story, there's this man, and he owned some land, and he had fields, and it seems like he had a decent amount of wealth because he owned a decent amount of property, and he had different people working for him, and he had some servants, and he had some his sons and stuff like that. And they said his youngest son came to him and said, "Dad, I want my inheritance." And for us, we think, oh, that's interesting. When Jesus tells a story, the crowd would have gasped. He asked for what? And Jesus says, the youngest son asked for his inheritance. Because also you got to remember, this is an honor culture. You greatly honor your parents, your elders. There's some good things about this culture. But you greatly honor your parents. And so by the youngest son going, hey, I want my inheritance, what he's saying to his dad is, I wish you were dead. So can you hurry up and die already, or can you just give me my money for when you do die? And so again, in this culture, they're thinking, oh man, this is exciting. This youngest son's going to get the tar kicked out of him. Like, this is going to be a violent story. That's the expectation. And Jesus says, the father says, okay, I'll give you your inheritance. Again, in our culture, it might be like going to the bank and pulling out some cash. And there was no banks. There was no current. It was tied up in the land. And so to be able to give his son his inheritance, the father would have had to sell some land. I've never grown up in a small town. I married a girl that did. And one of the things that I noticed was news travels fast. Everybody knows everybody's business. And so in this community, like hey, he would have passed word around, hey, I need to sell a part of my property. I need to sell a plot of land. Anybody interested? And somebody would have came up and said, hey, I'm interested. Yeah, I'd love to buy. Why are you selling? I'm giving my son his inheritance. He asked for his inheritance, and I'm giving it to him. Pardon? You're doing what? Like, the expectation would be to kick him out. You're no longer my son. You're dead to me. How dare you ask for this? And so he publicly has to sell some land, and he gives his son inheritance. And Jesus says the son takes the inheritance, and he goes to the city. And the text says he foolishly and lavishly just blows the money on just like sinful living. Doesn't tell us exactly what it is, but your mind could wander of what happens. And the text doesn't say this, but my imagination goes, when you got money to spend and you're having fun spending that money, you have a lot of friends. Because everyone's kind of mooching off you and like, hey, food for everyone, drinks for everyone, let's party, woo. You have a lot of friends. And I kind of have this picture in my head, is that's the life that's happening, is this guy's he's having a good time. And then the money runs out. And he's got no friends. And to put on top of that, Jesus says a famine hits. And so everybody's starting to struggle. And so he's thinking, I got to work. I got to eat. I got to survive. And so he starts going to all these friends. And he's like, hey, has anybody got like a job for me? Anything I can do? Anything I can work? And again, remember this honor shame culture. So you don't really want to say like no to somebody. So instead of saying no to somebody, what you do is you offer them something you know they would say no to. So he's coming around, this Jewish guy. It's like, hey, do you have any work? You know what? I've got all these pigs. If you don't know, pigs and Jewish people don't really mix. They weren't supposed to keep them. They weren't supposed to eat them. They weren't supposed to do anything with pigs. And he's like, hey, I've got these pigs. If you would like care for them, feed them, be with them, I'll give you that job. Offered him that because it's like, you're going to say no. And the guy's like desperate. He says, yeah, okay. And so he's with the pigs. Like, this is the lowest of the low. This is like, you can't get this son can't get any worse off. He can't get any lower than being with pigs, feeding pigs. As he's feeding the pigs, Jesus telling the story, he says he's looking at the food they're eating and he's becoming envious of their food. It's like, man, I wish I could eat that. Could you imagine? Like, oh, I wish I could eat what those pigs are eating. Jesus' crowd, it would have been quiet. I think the people in the back would have been like, he's getting what he deserves. He deserves worse than that. People sitting down, they'd be like, oh man, that's rough. That's rough. So he's sitting there and he's watching his pigs eat and he's craving the food that's in the trough. He starts to think and he's like, man, my dad back home, like he's established, he's wealthy, he's got servants. Like the servants eat better than I do right now. So he starts thinking, man, maybe if I go back and I become a servant, at least I'll get like a good meal. And maybe if I'm a servant, I can work my way back into my dad's good graces and his good books. I can earn my dad's favor. And so I don't know if you've ever been in trouble when you're a kid with your parents. I have been. I know it's a shock, but I've been in trouble. And you know how when you got to like confess to your parents or come clean to your parents or something like that, you rehearse in your head what you're going to say, and you're rehearsing like what's the best way to say this so the best possible outcome comes, like least amount of punishment. Hey, I'm so sorry, and or at least I didn't do this. It was just this. You ever done that, kids, or had your kids do that to you? You're trying to smooth things over. And so the son, he's walking back home, and he's doing that. He's kind of like, okay, Dad, I'm so sorry. I apologize. I've sinned against you and God, and I was just wondering if you could have me back. And I think he's probably, as he's walking, he's probably like he's rehearsing, he's thinking through all the different scenarios of, if my dad says this, I can say this to ease things. If he says, if this happens, I can do this. And as he's walking towards home, Jesus says, his father sees him. That might seem pretty simple, right? His father sees him. His father's looking for him. So it would have been at a distance. I was reading one little book, and it was a guy who was, he lived in the Middle East, and he was an expert of kind of Middle Eastern culture, which is this story takes place, and just the dynamics of shame and honor and what would have all taken place. And he said, what probably would have happened is, when you walk, you don't move super fast. And if people are all outside working the fields, as you're walking, they see you coming. And this author says what probably would happen in this situation is people would start coming off the field, like word would have spread along the fields of like, oh, it's the younger son coming home. And people would have started coming off the fields and getting close to the roads, and they would start hurling insults at him. How dare you? How could you have done this to your father? The shame that you put on him. The things you would have done. And so this son would be walking, and these insults would be hurling at him as he's walking. And so the intensity amongst the crowd of like, what's going to happen? Everybody, those standing in the back, those sitting, they would be like, what is going to happen? And Jesus says, the father sees him. They're like, okay. And the father starts to run to the younger son. Jaws would have dropped. Adult men did not run in that culture. It was undignified. Because you kind of had those gowns. You ever seen little kids' pageants? The boys wear like house coats or, So for an adult man to run in that culture, you'd have to pick it up and then start to run. And show your legs. Male legs aren't attractive. But it was just in the cultural setting. It was just undignified. Men did not run. And so everyone would have been like, pardon, Jesus? The father ran to the son? So I think the people in the back would be like, oh, okay, at least like he's running there because he's going to get what he deserves. Like, is it a kick or is it a punch? Like, what's going to happen? What's going to take, or pick up a stone and throw it at him? What's going to happen? And Jesus says he runs up to his son and he embraces him. He kisses him. He welcomes him home. People would have been like, what? And then he says, he does three things for this younger son. And they all have unique and interesting impact and perspective. He says, get my best coat and put it on my son. The best coat would have been reserved for, didn't have wardrobes like we do. They had a few articles of clothing for special occasion, your work clothes. The best coat, head of the household, it was for when you're hosting gatherings or hosting parties for people. You had this kind of like really nice coat that you'd put on of like, hey, I am honoring you. I'm putting on my best coat. I'm welcoming you into my house. And it was for the head of the household. It was for the husband, the patriarch of the household would wear this best coat. And he's saying, get that best coat and put it on my son. And then he said, get the ring and put the ring on his finger. This one blows my mind. The ring was like, was how like business transactions. If the family was going to buy grain or buy feed or buy more land or something like that, you'd have the ring, and it would be a signet to kind of sign transactions. And so the son that squandered his inheritance, the father's like, put the family ring on his finger. And he said, put sandals on his feet. See, servants and slaves went barefoot. If you weren't a servant or a slave, you wore sandals. So he's like, put sandals on his feet. This is my son. This isn't no servant. The son, he had his speech, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Father. I've hurt you. And he's just like, welcome home. I love you. And then he tells everybody there, I think everybody in the story, like everybody that would have been gathering around, they would have been like jaws dropped, like, what's going on? People listening to Jesus' story, they've just been flabbergasted. Like, he was supposed to, like, slap him at least, stone him at most, and you're lavishing this kind of grace and love on him. He's like, welcome home, son. I thought you were dead, and you are alive. You are my son. Let's come on home. Everybody, we've been fattening a calf. We're going to kill that calf. We're going to slaughter it, and we're going to have a party tonight. No microwaves, right? Like, things take time. And so this would have been like, like, come back in the evening, but we're going to start the process now. We're cooking up a feast. Spread the word. Everyone come on in. We are going to celebrate. My son who was lost and dead is alive and found. So come on in. And generally, people like a good party, especially if you're not paying for it. And so they're like, all right, let's go. And so that evening, man, that house was just hopping, like things were going well. The food and drink. And my imagination goes, there would have been good music, and it would have been a party. It would have been, and the father would just be beaming. He was just so happy. My son was lost, and now he's found. And Jesus doesn't end the story there. He goes, there was an older son, the firstborn. Those firstborn sons. And he's coming off the field. He's worked a long day, a hard day. Well, every day he works a long day and a hard day. He's a good son. He works hard for his dad. Tries hard. And as he's coming in from a hard day work, he's probably tired. As he's getting closer, you know how sound travels, especially in the evening. He can hear the noises and hear everything that's happening. And as he's getting closer and closer, he's realizing that's all taking place at our house. And as he starts to get pretty close to the house, he sees a servant and he says, what's going on? Oh, your brother. He's come back and your dad's throwing a feast, a party for him. And the older son is ticked, furious, upset, frustrated. And he refuses to go in the house. And when Jesus says, oh, he refused to go in the house, all the people sitting, they would have been like, oh! Because in that culture, your oldest son was supposed to have a jar of wine, and he would go around and he'd fill people's cups up. And we think, oh, that's nice, that's quaint. No. The significance was, it is so wonderful to have you as a guest in my house that even my oldest son, my firstborn, is serving you, waiting on you. It was like a symbolic gesture of just honoring your guests. You are so honored. You're such an honored guest that my eldest son will fill your cup. And so by him refusing to come in, he's dishonoring his father. He's turning his back on his father. He's just like, no way, man. No way am I going in. And so the father comes out to him. And again, it's kind of like, man, he deserves honor, shame culture. Everyone's expecting the father to, maybe not expecting him more because what he did with the younger son, but it's like what that older son deserves. He deserves, he deserves some fierce punishment. And Jesus says the father comes out. He's like, son, your brother is back. We need to celebrate. And the older son says, no way. You're celebrating him? He wasted all that money on prostitutes. We don't know if that's true, but that's what the older son said. He's thinking worst case about his younger brother. He is angry, frustrated. Do you know everything I've done for you? I've been a good son. I get up early. I work late. All these things I do for you. And you haven't done anything for me, Dad. You didn't even give me like a small little calf that I could like with my friends slaughter and eat and have like a little party. This guy wastes all your money and you do this big lavish thing. I've earned the right, Father, to be treated better. And the father's like, I love you, son, but your brother was lost, he was dead, and now he's found, he's alive. We need to celebrate. Come in with me. And that's how Jesus ends the story. Open-ended. And you got to understand, he's talking to those two crowds that are listening to him. You got all these, as the text said, notorious sinners that are sitting and listening to him. And Jesus is saying, you're the younger son. And even though all these hurts and pains and rebellion and things you've done, the Father is still welcoming you home. Is still lavishing love and grace on you. And then Jesus is saying to the Pharisees, the religious leaders standing in the back, you're the older son. You think because you've done the right thing, and you say the right things, and you've worked really hard, that you've earned something. You haven't. The Father still loves you. You don't earn it. So come on home, come on in. So I want to ask you a few questions. Do you ever feel like the younger son? Do you ever feel like you're like, oh man, how can Jesus really, how can God the Father really accept me, love me? Every once in a while, I'll hear somebody will say to me like, if you only knew. And then they'll tell something about their life. Or if you only knew, tell something about their feelings or thoughts. Like, how could God love me? And Jesus tells a story. He says, not only does God love you, he's running out to you. And he's celebrating. He wants to bring you home. And so if you feel like the younger son in this story, do you accept the Father's invitation to come home and to be part of the Father God's family? Or do you feel like the older son? And you look at what God's done for others and you're kind of like, why not me, God? Like, I've been a pretty good guy. I'm trying really hard here. Why aren't things going better for me, God? I think I've earned that at least from you. Do you find sometimes that when you see what God's doing in other people's lives, you're getting like a little cranky, a little frustrated, a little bitter? What, you're going to do that for them and not me? Do you know what I've done for you? The sacrifices I made for you, God? And Jesus' story is saying to those people, Come on home with God the Father. Just experience his patience and his grace and his love. Be part of his family. You don't do it out of getting stuff or earning. You do it out of love and grace. And so will you accept the Father's invitation there? And my last question is, what kind of church do we want to be? It's so easy to be a church of older sons, that we make church about us and how it makes me feel. Or we can be like the father in this story, where when we see younger sons, we're running out to greet them and to welcome them in. And when we experience older sons, we're patient with them and we're gracious with them. And I just want to say, will you get excited and participate with God our Father in the type of community he wants us to be? Will you be excited that when you see younger sons and daughters coming home, coming to the Father, that excites you? You celebrate it. You want to throw a party. But also when you see older sons and daughters coming to the Father, that excites you. That it's not about what I want, what you want, what we like, but it's about people coming home to the Father, becoming part of God's family. And so for some of us, this is just, kind of a reminder of like, yeah, you're right, Tyson. For some of us, there's a moment of like, man, I need to check my heart. Because if I was there when Jesus was telling the story, I don't know if I'd be sitting, agreeing with those other notorious sinners, or if I'd be standing in the back, kind of crossed arm, going, I don't know, Jesus. And so for some of you, it's a bit of a repentance point of just kind of like, man, I need to have more of a heart of grace and love, where I'm excited about people coming to the Father. And that's what I want to be about. And so we're going to close with just singing a song. As we sing a song, it's one we sung just not too long ago, but just declaring some of these things about God. And so I'm going to invite you to stand. And for some of you, as you sing this, there might be like, you just might want to quickly pray and just be like, Jesus, I just need to repent. I need to change of who I am and what I'm doing, my thought process. And for others of you, it just might be a reaffirmation. But let's just sing this song. So whether you're like a younger son or an older son, God is saying, I love you. Welcome home. Come. Be with me. Come. Walk towards me. And so I hope as a church we can be that for everybody. Welcoming people to him. Come to me. Come to Jesus. So Jesus, we thank you. You are good. We thank you that you are love and grace. We thank you that you don't respond to us with the reactions we sometimes think we deserve, but you respond to us with love and grace. As we praise you and worship you, help us to always have a posture of coming towards you, Jesus. We thank you and praise you. Amen. We like to say here, you didn't come to church, you are the church. The church gathered, equipped, and to worship and to pray. And now the church will scatter to be a beacon for Jesus wherever it goes. And so thank you for being the church and to gathering with us this morning. We'll be back here next Sunday. Have a great week.